Greetings and welcome to our fourth episode of Delta Emerald Unscripted. I'm your host, Ian Dominguez, founder of Delta Emerald Ventures. And Delta Emerald Ventures are the leading investors in cannabis THC drinks as well as cannabis technology. With me today is a very special guest. Diana has been at the forefront of the THC drink movement for as long as I can remember. I've only had the pleasure of meeting her myself in this last year, but trust me when I say that she is doing the really hard work behind the scenes. So it's my great pleasure to introduce her, Diana Eberlein of the CABA or CABA. Maybe Diana, you want to tell me what's your preference on pronunciation, and tell us a little bit about your organization.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. And people give me more credit than I deserve. I don't have anything to represent without the great beverages and producers out there that are manufacturing these products. So I give a lot of credit to the people I represent, and it's an honor to represent them. The Coalition of Adult Beverage Alternatives, or CABA, whatever you'd like to call it, is the unification, if you will, of the alcohol industry and the hemp beverage industry, looking to move forward with sensible regulation and make sure that we keep this industry alive. And that's really by focusing on the Farm Bill and making sure that these cannabinoids derived from hemp are kept legal. And then we can work at the state level on making sure that, we put regulations in place that allow this category to thrive.
Wonderful. So is that how you think about it? Is it order of operations, federal as a shield first before you start getting into the nuances of what can I do in a particular state? Is that the right way you think about it?
Definitely have state initiatives going on. I mean, there's always something going on at the state level that we're fighting or trying to correct.
Keeps it interesting.
You never get bored in this industry. But at the end of the day, all that goes away if the Farm Bill changes and somehow bans these cannabinoids. So what we're hoping to do is get ahead of that. Obviously, there were some amendments that came out in May and, for the Farm Bill as well as in appropriations that really threaten our category as well as all of hemp. As a result, we really wanted to be more proactive and get more involved. I think for a really long time, a lot of people in hemp thought this got too big. They can't put the cat back in the bag. It's too fat now. But the reality is regulators can do whatever they want. And if they want to shut this down or they don't feel that these products are safe in the marketplace, they can make changes that will impact us. And my job is essentially to make sure we all have jobs at the end of the next year and this category continues to grow. So we're really focused on the Farm Bill. That particular coalition is focused on federal initiatives, but we obviously have, partners like the Hemp Beverage Alliance and the Cannabis Beverage Association that focus on more of the state level issues on the hemp and marijuana side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always get nervous when people talk about toothpaste is out of the tube. I'll admit I've even said that in the past, but thought more about it, and just based on, let's say, what's happened with a woman's right to choose, toothpaste can get put back in a tube. So it does take concerted effort and collective action to, I think, allow this category to thrive in the direction that we all see it moving. On that point, THC drinks are obviously buzzing very much at this moment. What's got you most fired up about this category?
The normalization of THC beverages, seeing it commingle, if you will, in bars and restaurants with alcohol beverages being served right alongside it. I think it's really exciting to see that. It's not just Minnesota anymore. We're starting to see it in Illinois. We're starting to see it in Florida. Tennessee's Package Store Association is super involved. I mean, they have a hemp program and no marijuana program. So we're starting to see this category really change the perception, I think, of cannabis as a whole.
Yeah. So what can you maybe give a little bit of more detail on, you mentioned a couple states in the SEC conference, let's say, and this notion of a package store. For those that don't know what the significance of either that region or what package stores are, can you maybe just let people know?
Sure. So some of the markets that I mentioned there are ones that are either very supportive of the hemp beverage category, meaning they've put regulations in place that really allow our category to thrive, or they currently don't have regulations and we therefore have the ability to create those and work with regulators to put sensible regulation in place. But in that time period, we've seen, restaurants, bars, liquor stores, convenience stores get involved and actively support this category. So when I mentioned package store associations, those are the liquor store associations. So they control a lot of what happens in that market. As you can imagine, alcohol for a very long time has generated a lot of revenue and a lot of tax revenue in various markets. The states get to regulate how alcohol is sold within those markets. So as a result, working with them and getting them behind this initiative, since we want to work with them using their distribution, their retail outlets, it's important to get them involved and educate them on the category, but also, how we can work with them and educate their partners to get them behind this movement as well.
Absolutely. I had a very humanizing moment myself were you at the alcohol law policy conference by any chance?
I was not, but
Okay.
I've gone to a number of alcohol events and had some different experiences, but I had the best experience at the Texas Package Store Association, where it was so warmly received. I wasn't really sure going into it. Obviously, we have some champions in the state with Specs getting very much involved in this category. But I wasn't really sure what to expect from the rest of the liquor community. And first of all, we had 20 brands pretty much sampling and putting their products on display. They had a wonderful first impression, I think, at that show.
Yeah.
But
Can I ask, are those non-dosed in that context? Oh, they're dosed. Amazing.
They were dosed. Again, one of those things, like, we're not used to that, especially if you started in the marijuana space. We're all serving, uninfused samples. These were dosed. And you definitely had a lot of people excited about trying the product. In the past, you had, I remember when I started in this and we were doing CBD beverages, and you would say we were doing CBD and people would kind of jump back like, oh, like you're in the cannabis space. And here we are selling, THC, regardless of what it's derived from. And people are sampling it after just, having a conversation with the different brand teams. And I don't think there was a single person I spoke to that once we offered a sample said no.
Yeah.
So again, just such a night and day difference from when I started in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say what I was referring to with the ALPC was that it was the first time I think I really appreciated that what it's like to be a regulator and be in the interest of, say, public health. And not only that, but as a career regulator, let's say, or many decades or years in that public service, that they really are interested in this too. It is part of, they look at it as part of their career. I'm speaking about, say, like a state level regulator, or even people at the federal level, at the TTB, the FDA. These people are informed or getting very well informed. And it's not because they're not being dragged in kicking and screaming. It's actually kind of interesting to them too. And if I put my hat, or I try to imagine what that would be like, I can see how that would be kind of neat and interesting, because the reality is the alcohol industry and regulations around that have actually changed a good deal, especially in the last, say, decade. There's a number of reasons behind that, but it's a different take or perspective to realize what it's like from the eyes of the regulators. Any stories like that you might be able to share? I know you just got back from DC recently, right?
Yeah, so I'm actually based in DC now.
Okay.
So I'm 2 blocks from our lobbyists. They're either going to love or hate that. And I can walk to the Hill. So it's been really exciting to get involved in that way and be so involved. As you can imagine, there's still a lot of people we speak to that go, what is a cannabis beverage? Because they're not in Minnesota and they don't have this normalized in front of them. When you hear cannabis and hemp, beverage isn't the first thing that comes to mind. So we're doing a lot of that, grassroots education on the Hill. But it's interesting. We had I'm not going to say which office, but we had a meeting with an office on Tuesday that we knew was not necessarily for intoxicating cannabinoids as a whole, at least from hemp. we went in there and talked about, what we were looking to do and how we're working alongside the alcohol industry. And they found our category really interesting. They had not talked about our category exclusively before, but they actually said out loud, we really appreciate you guys going about this the right way. And I think sometimes that's the best result we can get right now from certain offices. We had other groups who were much more involved, and because their states are actively participating in this space, they're invested in, seeing how they can create a baseline regulation at the federal level that stops the volatility that we're seeing and the, patchwork we're seeing state to state. When brands have to have 10 different labels because of the different patchwork, it's just not scalable, but it's also confusing for the consumer because you don't have consistent labeling, you don't have consistent dosage, even though the cans might look almost exactly the same. So if someone's traveling and they go to another market, they might think, oh, that's gonna be a 5 milligram beverage, and find out it's only 1 milligram, or the other way around. They expect it to be 1 and it's 5. So, we wanna get ahead of that, and working with alcohol, we bring a lot more power to that conversation. And I think it overall ends up helping the hemp industry as a whole, because what we're asking from the Farm Bill is the same as pretty much the rest of the hemp industry.
Yeah. I've gotten some great input from very senior leaders within alcohol, even nudges. Let's say, I think maybe a year ago, I was calling it low dose beverages. Then I was saying, oh, how about low potency? Because someone was like, dosage doesn't feel right for our industry. Most recently, and I actually heard this from a regulator, they said, I think of this more as proof, low proof versus high proof beverages. So I just wanted to throw that out for the audience. But you do bring up one point I want to tug at a little bit as well. You're saying large alcohol organizations. I am going to name names because it's quite public, so that you don't need to, but it's quite well known. Specs, I think we did talk about that earlier. But ABC Wine in Florida, Total Wine, and more, well understood to be embracing this category. It also, I hope it's understood by this audience that you can probably order THC drinks on DoorDash depending on where you live right now. So I encourage anyone that's watching to check that out. But I wanted to hear from you, Diana. What is it about now that you think is allowed, or given the agency for these really big organizations to feel comfortable? Has something shifted, or what explains this? Has this been a long time coming, or kind of give your take on this?
I think the big motivation here is the opportunity from beer sales being down. I think that's what got a lot of distributors and retailers interested in finding another alternative. Obviously, with when you have marijuana markets already open, you're able to look at data and see what's selling, what's not. And then, of course, when we were given, and let's face it, it's a loophole. They did not intend to legalize intoxicating cannabinoids with the Farm Bill. And the reason we're trying to put regulations in place is because no one wants to say they're working within a loophole. It just doesn't give a good feeling. And ultimately, we have to make alcohol partners feel comfortable working with us, even though we are kind of working in that gray area right now.
I do want to interject, because the notion of a loophole, I think, is very funny to me, because and I got much love for everybody, but those who are, let's say, throwing stones, calling this a loophole, but if you're in the cannabis industry, recognize that this whole thing is a federal loophole. So let's be honest about that and move forward together. So I just couldn't help myself, but yes.
No, I agree. I think there's a lot we can learn from this. I think we've been able, for the low dose or low potency, gentle potency was one I heard the other day that I actually really liked. This was the opportunity we needed to prove that our category had demand. We were told for so long that, look, stop making low dose beverages. They don't sell. And they don't sell on the dispensary channel because our target audience isn't necessarily a cannabis consumer. Right. And it certainly isn't someone who's consuming higher dose products. So this gave us the opportunity to prove the demand and to prove that when positioned the right way and sold alongside the alcohol counterparts like wine, beer, and seltzers, that these products do sell. And ultimately, we do want to be regulated. We want the guardrails. We want to keep the consumer safe. So, and I think that's the narrative we need to carry forward, and we need to bring alcohol in to echo that as well. So that movement has really helped. But I think that a big part of why they've gotten involved at this point, I think, is to make up for the beer sales being down. Also, the non-alc space has been growing for the last few years before low-dose THC beverages were out in the wild, if you will. So as a result, the consumers are looking for other alternatives, and you have to meet that demand. So I think ultimately that's what's really pushed this, been the big motivator. And I don't entirely know if this is true, but I've always thought about it. Health and wellness became a big push after COVID. People became much more aware about what they were putting in their body. And we're probably getting a little bit away from that now because 2020 seems very far away. But at the same time, I think people really did take into consideration what they were ingesting and putting in their body more. So overall, I think consumers are just more aware. And as a result, looking for lower calorie items. They're looking for natural sugar. They're looking for things that, they feel better about putting in their body. And, we have plenty of things that I think cannabis and hemp offer to the consumer, and beverage is just a very discreet way to deliver that.
Not only discreet, but I can tell you from the data that we have, combustion, we think, has peaked in terms of its category penetration for all of cannabis. And it's not that difficult to understand why, in terms of the way that the consumer has moved away from combustion. Especially when you look at something like nicotine. So that trend is already well underpinned, regardless of what happens in the cannabis industry. So we're really just offering another form factor that's actually more akin to what all consumers are used to drinking. I think it might have been you that pointed out everyone puts liquid in their body every single day.
From the second we get up in the morning to we go to bed, we pretty much have some sort of liquid in hand. I've got 2 beverages right now next to me.
Me too. What are you working with?
I'm not going to look like the healthiest person on earth. I got the Diet Coke and a Celsius, so I'm loading up on the caffeine.
The caffeine, yeah. You decided to double down. Yeah. I'm on sparkling water, and because I want to mention something about that, and then a iced matcha latte.
Have you heard this before? I'm totally getting off topic, but I was at a BevNet conference and this summer, and huge shout out to BevNet, by the way. But someone on stage pointed something out that blew my mind, which is, as a millennial myself, I guess I thought that everybody drank carbonated water, like club soda or whatever, sparkling water. But the person on stage pointed out that Gen Z consumers basically do not like a carbonated form factor as often as their predecessors. And the thinking is that Gen Z's parents grew up at a time when it was well known that soda or Coke or whatever was not good to feed your kids. So you had a whole generation of kids that was not raised with that bite from the carbonation. And now it's almost like an assault on their taste buds, and it's just not their preference. And it never even occurred to me. Had you heard of that?
I hadn't heard that, but it makes a little bit of sense. My friends' kids who have not ever had anything carbonated, when they try something carbonated, like a sparkling lemonade or something, they refer to it as spicy, and they can't stand it. They freak out.
Like a spicy water.
Yeah. And they just kind of like pull back. So it makes sense that if they're not exposed to it, regularly, that it would be something they really have to adjust to. And it's funny, as much as I love, carbonated drinks, I actually have come to really appreciate still beverages. And I think that's partially because that's, like, the cocktails I used to drink were usually, vodka waters with like a fruit flavor added to it. That's what I preferred because I didn't like the bitter bite that alcohol had. So the seltzer for me added to that. So as a result, I kind of have steered away from that. Now with the cannabis drinks, because you don't have the alcohol flavor that you're masking, you generally have a cleaner flavor. So the seltzery, carbonation doesn't really bother me as much.
Yeah. Hadn't thought about that.
because I always think about like White Claw. I couldn't stand White Claw. No offense to White Claw. This is just my opinion.
Yeah. White Claw had its time during COVID. That was White Claw summer. So
yeah, it really crushed then. Someone described it once as tasting like TV static with someone yelling the flavor from across the room, because it had very little flavor. But there was something about that description where I was like, man, I can't explain it, but that hits. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Because it just had too much carbonation for me.
Yeah.
But it's everyone's different. That's what I like about beverage. There is something for everyone, every flavor profile. You've got brands like Keef Cola using those nostalgic flavors.
Totally.
Brands like Fable that have very artisanal, fruit-based products. You've got Pomos that's really going after that high-end, mixer. That's going after kind of mocktail flavors, if you will. I mean, you've got something for everybody, and they taste great. So it's exciting to kind of see these brands develop and really create a lifestyle around them.
So last question. So we've run the gamut on different flavors. What about occasions or locations? I'll just throw out, when you think about on-premise versus liquor store, versus off-premise, or whether you're thinking about a channel like liquor stores versus convenience versus grocery, where are you seeing the most traction today? Where do you think that the lion's share of the growth comes from in the next 5 years?
Sure. We have always pushed for having our products sold anywhere or having them available anywhere where alcohol is sold and served. We feel that they should be made available there and any places that are typically age gating because they're selling alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, because what you hear a lot in this space, from a regulatory standpoint, is that, these hemp products are getting in the hands of kids. With that sort of concern, it's a lot easier to sell into liquor stores because you have to be 21 to be in a liquor store. So you kind of mitigate that right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
By putting that product in liquor stores. Obviously, some states have liquor sold in grocery stores and convenience stores. And we think that as long as they're positioned the appropriate way with alcohol labeled as an intoxicant, clearly labeled that is a THC beverage, that should be acceptable as well. I think in the near term, we're going to see liquor stores adopt this just because, again, it mitigates. I think at the state level, states are going to feel more comfortable with that, knowing that
as a higher degree of control than, say, gas station.
Right.
Your average gas station.
Yeah. And I think gas stations get a really bad rap. My Diet Coke and Celsius taste the same at gas stations.
Right.
I don't think there's a quality issue necessarily there, although I'm not going to have gas station sushi anytime soon. I think that, it really depends on who's going to that store, what they are typically selling, and understanding, like, if a lot of alcohol is moving through a store, they're age gating. They have to be age gating. And we want, frankly, when we go and ask for regulations, we're also asking for the same penalties as alcohol, because, if alcohol gets dinged, a retail location will lose their license or something like that. The same penalty should be in place for selling any sort of intoxicant like that.
Totally agree.
So, we think that makes a lot of sense. I'm most excited about on-premise though, because I think on-premise, when I think of the sports arenas, concerts, particularly music, I feel like cannabis and music have always kind of gone together. So THC and music makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, and I also think that that's where low dose is really going to shine, because we are promoting these products as sessionable. And that's exactly where you want to have a sessionable product. You're not necessarily looking for a one and done. So ultimately, that's what I'm really excited to see. If we can just figure out the insurance piece for some of these larger opportunities, I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I don't think it's I think it's a when, and I do think it's imminent if it hasn't already been solved. So
we're talking to some people. We're close.
Yeah, I've heard. Well, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much, Diana, for taking the time. And again, if anyone wants to learn more about her organization, CABA, how can they find more information?
Sure. I've got a number of emails. If you know me from this industry, you can probably find a way to get a hold of me. You can find me on LinkedIn, but you can also email me at diana@adultbevalt.org. That is the new, we'll have a website up pretty soon, but we've just launched and just started lobbying on the Hill. So that can be where you reach me moving forward.
Brilliant. Thanks again, Diana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.